General Manager. We'll begin the meeting as recorded for Corporate Service Committee on the 16th of May 2025 in the Council Chambers in the Phil Rose Room today. And we'll begin today with any applications for video link.
Neil, Mr. Chair.
Manager, any apologies today?
No, everyone's present.
Yep. Disclosures of interest.
None received.
Public participation.
Neil today.
And we might as well move forward into the business items. If we could hand over to Mr. Phelps, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So effectively, we'll start at the core 05.1. Down the bottom of page 3 there is just an overall summary of the position to date to the end of April. Negative variance at the moment of $1.85 million compared to $438 million negative variance to the end of March. Haven't considered any votes coming through for this current month. We're just going through looking at all our capital works programs and deliverables, and expected that there'll be votes and surrenders for the period of May. And that pretty well aligns with the revised budget that comes into the Depop, and also if there is any other projects that we need to carry forward into the new budget year, we'll carry forward those items into that year. Just going through the main highlights attached to the result to the end of April. In our operating revenue, we're a little bit in front, about $750,000, which is about 1.3 of the overall budget at the moment. Main factors, Government Place, its revenue is higher by that 67, which is pretty well a bit of increased funding from the Department of Health in regards to residents having different requirements and dependencies.
That's not a one-off. That's going to be something that'll carry on.
It'll be a continual thing coming through. So by the end of the year, I'd say, Councillor Fraser, that it'll be around about that 100,000 in front overall, but it doesn't offset the costs that we do have dragging on the other side.
No, but I not to get off topic at this stage, but I mean the numbers that thus far for Government Place being behind 600 and something, but the prediction's about 820, isn't it, by the end of the year?
Yeah.
In the financial year.
Yeah, that's right. So this 67, even if it was on ongoing monthly, it's not going to have a huge impact on that 800,000.
That's 67K. That's not a monthly. Is that a monthly figure?
No, that's a year to date.
That's a year
Right.
to
So,
date,
okay.
Yeah. So
have all the invoices been issued for government? I think there was at the
there was two respite ones that went out late. Was it two?
Yeah, I think there was, but we got all the invoices out with the residents and stuff like that.
So that'll carry on now, won't it? I mean, whatever the glitch was previously, we're not doing that again, are we?
No. So effectively, we've got a process in place where respite agreements will come over to council ASAP from once the resident comes into respite, and the invoicing will be done on like a fortnightly basis, which is like all the other residents.
Yeah. No, I get the impression that there's a certain faction in Merriwall that seems to believe part of the reason why Government Place is not financial is because we're not sending the bills out. But
it has no bearing.
No. As I say, for the purpose of having public discussions with everyone, I think it's important that we get the bills out on time, so we say, look, we are putting the bills out, but it's not really solving the problem.
Yeah, it's not necessarily relevant to the issue, but it's not a good look not to have it done.
Correct. It's a perception.
Yeah, correct. Moving into our next one there, the private works. That'll be lower than budget by the end of the year, I would assume. So we might do a little bit of vote to clear that out. It has a cost on the other side of that we have savings in. So that's 82. Also, we have a bit of work going on at the moment in regards to the private works area, which we'll have a bit more billing before the end of the year. The real estate revenue is lower by 64,000, a little bit lower in Campbell's Corner. We've got a couple of shops vacant down there at the moment, so it's a little bit lower there. We're just going through reviewing our actual commercial properties at the moment, make sure all the billing's all up to date with those as well coming through.
Are we carrying any bad debtors on the rental front on the commercial buildings?
We've got some debts that are doubtful. We haven't called them bad yet, and that probably comes to the facility out of the Warbirds. So at the moment, we've got about nearly 10 grand probably outstanding out there.
Right.
So it's one of those ones that we're chasing and we've issued a number of letters in regards to it. But
Termination notice has been issued.
yeah, so we're going down that path.
Might be the last dollar you see.
Yeah,
That particular place.
we accept that.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. We manage our own real estate ourselves. So we're the landlord and we're also the real estate agent.
Correct.
Would we be better to be using commercial real estate agents and copying the 7% or whatever it is, and not having these bad debts or not having these rental arrears? I heard a bit of a whisper the other day about this fellow out at the airport, and apparently he's behind 6 months in his rent. Now, we should have locked the doors months ago. If he hasn't been paying, and if we had a local real estate agent managing it for us, the real estate agent would be on saying he hasn't paid his monthly rent or his weekly rent or whatever it is. What do you want us to do?
Yeah,
I just think we've got to be a whole lot tougher with some of these people who take us for a ride.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've actually put into place a few processes now that will be addressed. The arrears side of things. We don't really want to cop a 7% cost to
Well, I'm
the bottom line,
thinking
whether the
7%,
agent-
whatever the rent is,
but the
next
agent
to a
will not.
$10,000
Yeah.
debt is starting to look all right.
Yeah, through you. I agree with Mr. Phelps, absolutely. Being a real estate agent, I don't want to speak ill of all real estate agents, but quite frankly, being a real estate agent is one of the greatest scams now. It really is, and particularly when it comes to commercial real estate, which this is. You pay your percentage, be it 5 to 7%, and quite frankly, you get very little for it. And they're only going to duplicate the work council's already doing, and they're going to charge you for it. At the end of the day, with commercial real estate, most of these leases are commercial leases. They're not retail, they're not residential tenancy leases. They are slightly different leases. And there will be conditions in there that say if you don't pay your rent and the following things happen, there's a process that engages. And if you then don't pay your rent, there's a notice process that you have to go through. It's something that I don't think you need to be spending money on a real estate agent to do, particularly also because at least if you're running a business, if I rent out commercial property and I pay a real estate agent, please become tax deductible. Council pays a real estate agent, instead no, it goes nowhere. And I don't think it gives you any additional service for the expenditure of that money. So in my view, I don't think it'd be warranted to encourage an agent for the day-to-day running of the property portfolio. Happy to hear other points of view, but there's certainly.
I also agree, but I definitely think that we're getting close to bad debts on there for 6 months. Obviously more focus, and council's obviously put in measures there to change that process. So we do have a problem, but if it's focused and sorted, definitely I'm not a fan of funding other people's business ventures in the real estate fraternity. But yeah, as long as we're producing a like for like service, yeah, that's the main thing.
I think there is a place for agency if you're selling property. I think that there probably is a place for them in that regard, for the purpose of selling properties at market value, and they're seen to be selling to an open market. I think there is a place to engage an agent there, but for the running of property portfolio, I think it's just dead money. I don't think it's going to give any real value to council to engage an agent for running the property portfolio on at least the rental properties.
Yeah. No, through you, Mr. Chair, certainly took all the points on board, very disappointing out there, and I think we can do better, as everyone just said. If I went to my nutrients were ideal from and went 6 months, I certainly wouldn't be picking up my dog biscuits next week, I can guarantee you. You probably get 2 months and then pay up or get out. My biggest disappointment out there at the moment is the place is not run. One of the most important days of the year, race day, planes will be coming in weather permitting very shortly, pilots. No cafe, but that's operational, and you guys got to work through that. But it is very, very disappointing.
Yeah.
And
Through Mr. Chair, that'll be addressed through the new lease.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, moving down to the next item there, which is pretty well the tourism revenue. It's lower, and that is Hunter Wallbird's attendance and the facility hire. We're now going through that final process of the new lease arrangement in regards to the Hunter Wallbird's facility. So that'll be
How close are we to finalising?
probably within the couple of weeks, I would
Yeah,
assume would be signed off.
The two solicitors are discussing conditions and clauses. We've been involved in those discussions to try and finalise the details. There's a piece of work with Mr Phelps at the moment, just around some of the insurance questions. So that's just being resolved now. So yeah, probably a couple of weeks.
And we'll get a little bit of insight into any peculiarities or changes in the lease through that.
Yeah, we can provide that back to you if there's any material changes. There's nothing material from the council resolution. I certainly wouldn't do that without bringing that back to council in advance anyway. The majority of it's just around finalising. I guess some of the issues around who is responsible for certain aspects under the lease. Obviously as landlord, we're responsible for the building. They're responsible for day-to-day maintenance. There's some questions around, well, when does day-to-day maintenance stop and when does, so there's some backwards and forwards around definitions in that regard.
Pretty standard sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Negotiating commercial lease. One thing I did notice, and it's almost a de minimis sort of issue. There's a billboard getting up towards Crestfield Road that advertises Warbird. So are we going to stop paying for that? It's going to be someone else's.
I think we've got that on a 12-month arrangement. So from when that comes due, we'll pass that back to.
Correct. Back to the operators.
Okay, great.
What do those billboards cost us?
It'd be probably maybe $2,000 a year, their max.
Is that all?
It's not it's not much. Yeah.
Is that all?
Yeah.
The one down at Aberdeen's been there for quite a long time.
Yeah, it's a pretty cheap form of advertising.
Yeah.
Having said that, we are looking at new electronic advertising at White Park, and that's looking quite favourable at present. So it could potentially be one of a number of ads on a cyclic electronic notice board at White Park.
I'll release that out to outside advertising.
So effectively, it becomes cost neutral, and we get 20% of the advertising space because the other 80% pays for the operation of the facility. So within that 20%, we could choose to have White Park Warbirds if we chose to, or any other events that we wish to promote the rest of the Shire.
So is that planned for somewhere near the bypass? So
Yep.
passing traffic.
Yeah, we're just in negotiations with the provider. It has to go through a DA process. And Transport for New South Wales will need to give their approval because it is, whilst it's not on their land, it will be within what they call the sight distances of the road. It's 100km/h zone, so there's certain requirements around length of ads and the like.
Don't want to distract them.
Yeah, you don't want people pulling up so they can read the rest of the ad. So there's a few steps, but essentially the whole model is cost neutral to us because we only get 20% of it and 80% goes to external advertising.
I think that'd be extraordinarily popular in the community. I manned the barbecue at the barrier competition over the last weekend, and I can't tell you how many times people said, "Oh, if only we knew what was going on here down through the time." So that will be a very popular piece of infrastructure.
I mean, really, the people who run the White Park Facebook page, there's the sort of thing that should be going up on there.
Exactly.
A bit more frequently. Yeah. But I know the same. I drive past and I see a great pile of trucks there and what the hell's going on there? I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
I go past there virtually every Sunday morning to church, and honestly, I reckon 3 out of every 4 Sundays, the place is packed out.
Yeah, there's an event there most weekends.
It's true that, Mr Chair, through the tourist, Muswellbrook and that. I try to talk, working in with Muswellbrook Shire. Muswellbrook have one, we have one, and we promote each other's activities. And I thought that's what was going to happen. But I see Muswellbrook have gone out on their own and got their own.
Yeah, I believe Muswellbrook have fully funded 3 new signs for the entries to their Shire. And I don't believe they'll be relying on external advertising. I think they're just using it for internal promotion. But I'm yet to see the full detail of that.
No, they've got an awful lot more money to spend.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, moving down to general revenue. In front of budget at the moment, we've got a bit more interest income coming in from a number of term deposits from the milestone payments we received from Main Road 358, which was quite pleasing. So that has an effect overall and an available cash for other parts of the operation within council.
And we're likely to see a decrease in those.
Correct.
interest rates very shortly.
With White Park, revenue is lower by 106,000. We have a number of events that are obviously happening at this point in time. So like over this, May, April period, with the horse festival activities. We do have a workshop coming up in regards to White Park, and we're going to raise these fee structures
I was
coming
going to say,
through.
because the CPI increases aren't going to make up
Correct.
the loss.
So effectively, we're going to look at the fee charges and look at what
Particularly-
definition is a local user.
Precisely. I'm just going to say that we need to be a little bit more stringent about who is a local user and how much of a discount they get.
Exactly. So that'll be a discussion point for the committee coming through.
So through you, Mr Chair. So if we were to look at April, May, where there's a high utilisation of White Park, can we create a profit and loss statement or something that says this is, because if we're not making money at the moment, we've got a problem because it's horse festival, it's the rodeo was on the other week.
So a lot of the horse festival events, Mr Chair, are part of our donation and support to the horse festival week. So a lot of those activities are effectively free for that. So we don't get a lot of income for that. A lot of the other events throughout the year, as we've already discussed, have come in under what they call a local user rate. So there's a significant discount provided them. And I think that's the key to our workshop coming up in a week's time, where we need to really redefine what a local user is. A local user, in my mind, is a small community group that is running activities rather than an event. But a group that is running an event for profit or for ticket sales probably shouldn't be getting the local user benefits. But that's for the workshop to thrash out, I guess.
Because again, through you, Mr Chair, I was down on the bottom gate, the Hill Street gate for the rodeo, helping the scouts out, collecting funds. And I don't know how many times people said to me, where do you camp? And I said, see that light green thing on the map, that's where you camp. What's it cost? I said, I don't know. Now, apparently they're supposed to pre-book that online. I said, I don't know anything about it. So I was happy to take their money for the rodeo, but
Well, that through you, Mr Chair, that's good feedback, because that can be a point that's raised at the committee meeting in regards to it.
The sign on the gate, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or a QR code or something.
It's always been a conjecture point, this camping, and a lot of our local users per se that have these one-off events seem to think that they're not required to provide a lot of camping dollars to council, which is a bit of a misnomer.
I guess my question is, did we have a council ranger or someone down there
Yes.
in that council area on rodeo weekend going to campsites?
So no, we don't. So yes, we do, and no, we don't.
Yeah.
So we have a staff member assigned to White Park that will do spot checks. He's not available every single weekend, so there are some events that get through without a spot check. When he does do spot checks, he takes a card reader so he can do payments on the spot.
Okay, well,
But it is an ongoing problem, and it is something that we've identified. And part of the problem is, do we put the onus on the individual to pay, which then again raises the issue that you raised of how do they find out where to do it and not to pay? Or is, when there's a large event like the camp drafters or something, do we just hire out as part of when they hire the ground, so they pay a camping fee, and then they hire out the campground to collect the money themselves?
Correct.
That's sort of the model, the question of the model, which is a conundrum, and something we'll probably, I imagine, thrash out in the White Park.
Yeah, that's on the agenda for the meeting as well.
As I say, signage and a QR code to me screams a reasonable start. As you come in the gate, this is what pay. Here's the QR code. Pay it. And if you come around, and you haven't paid it.
Perhaps a little stir and say, we'll fine you.
That's right. Pay you $25, or if we come around and you haven't paid it, $250.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Moving down to the next item there, which is the aerodrome, lower by 80 grand. And we've got our annual access fees going through at the moment, so that'll increase our revenue streams for that area. We had those earlier in the piece in the budget, so it should improve. Still will be behind budget by the end of the year, I predict.
For those who weren't at the aerodrome meeting, it was gratifying to note that there was no pushback on the concept of an increase in the fees, that they all felt that, and the charge being led by Harley McKillop, which is great, saying that they thought they were actually getting value for money out of their fees and wouldn't be averse to a fee increase, which is somewhat refreshing.
Did we put the fees up?
Well, this is part of
That's
the,
for the proposed fees.
Yeah.
No, this is as from the first of
So we,
July.
during the committee meetings at this time of year, we start to talk to the committees. So it's not a shock to them. This is our proposal for the upcoming next budget.
And we've also listened to, through you, Mr. Chair, listened to a lot of the smaller users as well, and looked at the weight ranges and things like that. So we're trying to be fair and equitable across the board, trying to get a landings increasing and getting tourists into the area from outside the Shire as well.
one of the issues was that the current weight range of arrangements. So there's bands of weight ranges of aircraft, and if you fall in a certain weight range, you pay a certain landing fee. The widest weight range is about 1.6 to 5 tonne.
Yeah.
Also included the vast majority of Cessna 182s and 185s and those sorts of ones that the most recreational pilots fly.
Yeah.
So they're paying a higher fee. What we've done is break that weight range down so that there's a lesser fee for those types of recreational planes, which should make it more attractive for them to come and use. So that they're going to pay slightly less than what they would otherwise.
Those C-160s that are out there, what sort of weight are they? And are they impactful to our engineering?
I think they were brought in under a special permit. So they landed, under a special permit. They're currently sitting on the airfield. As a local user, we have an arrangement when you can park on the grass for free if you're a local user. So they're not accruing any parking fees. If they weren't a local user, parking fees would be quite considerable. I only had a conversation with someone the other day. I don't mind the local users parking on the grass because it gives the image of activity happening at the airport. So it generates some energy, I guess, out there. That's my view.
One of the great scams, Earl, is
Why do you drink this at me?
Just about funding, the funding. One of the great scams out there is that Air Force planes don't pay anything. So when we get a visit from our politicians, they come up here in an Air Force plane, they don't pay any landing fees.
They're exempt.
Nor do they give you a visit.
No.
So given today is what it is, and assuming there's rain and no fog, we should be doing very well today. Is that
Hopefully.
Yes, we'll get some good landing fees today.
A lot of the droppers flying, particularly the Sydney ones flying, a lot of the trains flying. So yeah, you'll be getting some traffic there today.
Yeah.
And tomorrow's a standalone race day. Yep. So it'll be pretty busy tomorrow as well.
Righto, moving down to our Transport for New South Wales State Roads, in front budget slightly by about 130K. So we'll see a big jump in our revenue coming through, which will be in line with our budget over the course of the next 2 months, with about 1.8 received to like the first couple of weeks of May from works that we undertook back into like that March quarter coming through. So we'll see that revenue coming through. But it'll all be within line with budget with our request votes that we done at the previous meeting. Sewer revenues higher, bit increase in our interest returns, which has been quite good, and our user fees and access charges are a little bit higher as well. So that's quite pleasing. Water supply, similar scenario with interest coming through from the investments and a little bit higher capital grant funding from our UV chlorination plant. So that's been an item that is nearing completion from that project. Non-operating revenue and expenses. This includes our revised vote in our internal fleet of the 800 reduction from last month. So it's still behind budget by about 150K. So we'll continue to monitor that as it comes through. Internal gravel, however, that will improve significantly over the course of this quarter as we bring into account the gravel that's been used up on the Barrington Forest and Moonam Brook, Hunter Road areas. So that will jump significantly over the course of the next couple of months. And then it'll be pretty well back in line with budget or over and above.
Those charges are billed to grant, they come out of grant funding.
Through the chair, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep. So, we've got grant funding attached to those. Moving into our operating expenditure, which is,
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Each time we have this meeting, I've struggled with this. Why is that a red figure when our expenditure is lower than budget?
this is the actual revenue as well, operating, non-operating, operating revenue. and
Oh,
expenditure.
okay, so revenue and
Yeah,
expenditure,
so-
right.
and the
so-
primary one in there is revenue, being the internal fleet hire
Right,
and our gravel, to our capital projects. So it's more of an income item coming through predominantly. Operating expenditure is where we have the main area of the, overspend and negative to budget coming through. Three main items in here, which we'll go through and I'll highlight as we come down the page. There's a lot of unders and overs within. So financial services is lower by 110,000. So we've had lower salaries coming through. We had a couple of vacancies there for a little period of time. And also we've charged for capital projects a bit of overhead money. So with a lot of our capital works project, if we see that they can have a capital overhead put to them, we will put that to them.
Excellent.
The fleet management is lower by 232. Our revenue might be a bit lower, but also the cost of maintaining our fleet is also a little bit lower coming through. So that's 232 lower. Governance is higher by about nearly 40,000, which is just purely insurance premium increases coming in. Information services is lower by $50,000. A lot of that is timing, but we have used less consultants required over the past 10 months, which has been quite pleasing. So the guys that in the IT area have been able to deal with the majority of problems that we do have. Infrastructure support is higher by 45. Cost higher for the admin costs in this area, which is pretty well the looking at the admin of the infrastructure services, which is a couple of admin staff and the director of infrastructure services. So we continue to monitor that cost coming through. Community services lower by 36, just staff vacancies and long-term leave taken by some of the staff coming through. Government place is one of the ones that is quite high, so it's nearly 900,000. We've spoke about that in depth over the course of a number of meetings coming through. And unfortunately, we still have a lot of agency staff on tap at the moment.
Did we get to the bottom of that issue of the 270 number per agency staff? Because that was a number that was raised.
Yeah, so it's probably not too far from that. It's probably just under that. It's approximately $1,000 per day for an agency staff person.
That's through the chair, a registered nurse, agency staff.
Yeah.
Not the PCAs. The PCAs are a lot less.
Yeah, so
Yes, that's the number.
that's an RN7, so that's the one that you're required to have.
Correct.
And you have to have three of them, don't
I
you?
believe we need 24-hour
Yeah.
service, so three to cover
Effectively,
3 8-hour shifts.
And your advantage of scale only kicks in when you get to about 28 beds. So we've got to have those three nurses, but unless we've got a sufficient number of residents, like I think it's 28 or 30.
That's quite high. It's significantly higher than that, Mr. Through your chair. If you look at that little graph that Steve Rook had the other night, one nurse can service up to 80 beds.
Mm.
So you can almost get up to 80 beds before you've got to put a second nurse on per shift. So operating at only 15 means that you're operating well under the efficient level of what one nurse can service.
Mm.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Also, it's not a 24/7 type arrangement with the registered nurses. We do have on-call periods,
Okay, right.
but we do have to have on-call for the period that they're not on the floor.
Presumably they paid for being on call though as well.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a lot lower cost overall, but there is still a cost attached to that.
Yeah.
And if they come in for an hour, we have to pay them effectively time and a half, double time.
There's a minimum number of hours they get paid.
So-
Yeah,
And is it in fact the situation that we just don't have enough suitably qualified RM7s who want to live in Marywar to hire local people. Is that the reason why we have to hire agency staff?
Yes, that's right. We've advertised. We generally can get casual staff over there for, the lower skilled level jobs. But for those high level skills that need university qualifications such as nursing,
But it's a specific type of nurse you have to have. It's a quite highly qualified nurse that you have to have as part of the condition. And I have had this explained to me by my partner who is,
Right, okay.
who is, the background is as an ER nurse. So she's explained to me that, the type of nurse that you have to have there is not just your everyday run-of-the-mill nurse. They're pretty highly qualified and they're expensive. Even if you hire them full-time.
Well, that's right.
it's
Yeah,
still
there's still
expensive.
quite a significant cost associated with them if you can get them as a permanent employee.
Through you, Mr. Chair, also with our nursing staff, we have some on a casual basis, but we offer up shifts, but they decline. And that's why we do have to have the agency.
Yeah.
So they might be only able to work nighttime shifts, but we've got that covered by other means, or we may not need it on for that nighttime shift. It might be on call.
It's just the question that we as councillors run into as part of the standard litany or the standard set of questions or comments that we get. It's always the issue of the cost of outside staff members and the fact that we have people in Marywar who will do this job, but they're not being hired for X, Y, and Z reason, or they won't work there. As I say, the answers that I would. I mean, when I give answers to people, I just want to be sure of the basis that I'm saying it, that it really is that we appreciate that Marywar wants to be involved, but there aren't enough of you to do the job. They're suitably qualified.
So just on that, and particularly too close to operational, but some of those complaining staff, do any of those complaining that they're not being employed have an RN qualification?
Yes,
No?
I would assume that there could be some of those staff, but the hours that they want to work is not when we require them to work.
Yeah, I was going to say,
So
there's
we
one
offer up the actual work
Yeah.
and so shifts are available. However, the hours, those shifts that are available is not suitable.
And what would be the difference in cost of having an RN employed directly and having an RN employed by through the agency?
probably 100,000.
Yeah, you'd say.
Yeah.
An RN,
100,000 per annum.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, they're probably so the ones that you want I think close to about 130.
Yeah.
If you like.
Yeah.
No, we're saying the difference is probably 100,000. So if we're
100,000,
paying
yeah.
270 for an agency staff member, you could expect probably with on costs and sort of some annual leave and sick leave, 170 is a cost.
Where nurses make their money, it's not from where they sell. We only make their money from the overtime. So what they chase is the overtime, and that's where the huge costs come in is the overtime. So your base rate is reasonably modest, but your shifts are going to be like 12 hours. So they all want the overtime because that's where they make their money. I'm like, have this all explained to me by someone who knows.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. They're chasing overtime. So that's where your expenses come.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that someone mentioned the other night, there's a grant available on the 20th, I think closing date this month for, government. Is that something that we could possibly, or we will be applying for, which will alleviate some of those high numbers?
Yeah, we'll probably talk about that, councillor, in the grants area.
Yeah.
There's a grants report coming through, so we can talk about that.
Mr. Chair, back to those RNs, I mean, I had a meeting with the United Health the other day. And Marywar do say there's plenty of people to do the job. I think it's 2.5 to 3 years above where you are as a nurse to get up to the RN.
That's it.
It's a big jump.
And the type of RN, there are gradations of registered nurses as well, and the ones that you have to have are the higher level, they're the more qualified ones. So after you get your RN qualification, you then do bolt-ons on top of that. To be able to do certain things, and then you've got to maintain those. And as I say, I understand being a registered nurse is extraordinarily complicated, and it's ongoing learning. And quite frankly, from the point of view of the continuing education I have to do each year, what they have to do is extraordinary.
And what they explained out there was, it wasn't just Marywar. We got Marywar, they can't get RNs into the bigger hospitals
Mm.
in the smaller towns. So to get them to go to Merriwa, unfortunately,
Yep.
is the situation we're in.
And as I said before, you won't get RNs just if you offer them a base salary and say, we'll give you 120,000 a year. They don't want that. What they want is the ability to earn overtime. So putting them on a salary position on a lower amount won't attract the right people.
No.
You have to be able to offer them the overtime so they make the better money. As I say, that's how it was explained to me anyway. Base salary is not attractive. Overtime, can't offer overtime, won't get people.
Yep, and through you, Mr. Chair, as the industry is depicted, there is a shortage of registered nurses across the board, and I'm sure that a young registered nurse coming out of one of the universities and other things, they will probably head more towards city metropolitan areas. So unfortunately, that's the situation that we're in.
A lot of things for us in the
Yeah,
country,
yeah,
and particularly in Maryville.
yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that $893,000 behind budget, that's a 24-25 figure. Now, there must be a whole lot of extraordinary items in there. Mr. Rook, for example, EOIs and all that.
Yep.
So if we took all those extraordinary items out, what would that reduce to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, probably reduce it by about 100 grand.
Yeah.
It wouldn't reduce it down by half of it or anything like that. It'd only be probably $100,000, and that's even actually having the an association that we engaged for sort of like the first part of the year for compliance work. So that I'd call that as an abnormal cost because the government's required us to do this compliance work, and we don't have the skill set at the facility to undertake some of that work.
And the nurse call system, that doesn't fall into operating expenditure.
No, that's a capital. That's another 100 grand.
That was a capital.
Yeah.
That was a capital.
So as Councillor Fraser rightly pointed out, probably a couple of $100,000 would come off that to 893.
We'll whack another 170 or whatever it was for the on-call.
Have to look at the estimates we put in for 25-26, and they're around 680,000
680,000
as the expected.
That's the expected deficit.
That's probably a generous interpretation too, I would suggest. Probably likely to be worse.
Well, quite possibly
So-
coming through.
So when we use an agency nurse and he or she's getting $1,000 a day, does that include accommodation? Or have we got to pay accommodation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, correct. It does. So if we've got an agency nurse on tap, we do pay the accommodation cost as well for that agency nurse.
Yeah.
Part of the agency agreement.
Yeah, okay.
And also we do pay travel to come to the facility as well. So all those costs are effectively underneath the agency agreement.
Yeah, so the figure you pay the agency quote, I assume quotes you a figure to supply
Correct.
a body, and
A body.
that's the number you pay.
Plus
And then
add-ons.
Yeah.
So if they're coming from Queensland, they're getting
Oh, well, I assume.
that allowance.
I don't know how the allowance
Yeah,
works.
through you, Mr. Chair, the allowance is pretty well the cost to get them on site.
Yeah.
So we may pay an airfare ticket and then they're on site type thing, and the travel into the facility. We pay for accommodation. We don't pay for meals, obviously. We don't pay anything for meals. That's a normal everyday living cost. But the actual cost to actually bring them from where they're residing to the facility, we have to pay that sort of cost. Unfortunately.
Sorry to extend this. It is very difficult to get RNs to want to work solely for one. My experience from that comes from my mother, who in her later life as an RN worked exclusively for agencies. And one of those reasons is because if you get sick of where you're working, you get problems, you tell them, I want to work somewhere else. Now, that flexibility is enormous for that high stress job, and that's one of the reasons that we're having these escalations in the nursing sector.
That's an extraordinarily huge number for RNs, even at the best of times. The numbers that go into it and then come back out after
Yeah, exactly. Okay, moving down to our next item on the list, which is the top of page 6. Youth services is lower by 78,000. Lower costs in our drop-in and EIPP areas, activities to date due to staff vacancies. We're trying to spend that EIPP money or looking at rolling that over into next year because that's a fully grant funded item.
Are we in danger of losing that?
There is a possibility.
Yep.
Councillor, that you could lose that.
Yep.
We make application to the department to see whether we can roll that over, but we have to have a reason for how we're going to spend that overrun for next year. So that is a possibility coming through.
It really is. Are we making enough efforts to fill that role?
I'd probably have to take that on notice and find out what the employment is in regards to the IPP. I can only assume that we have got that vacant role out and about. We have had some new staff members come on in the youth services area. That an EIPP skill set is a little bit different, I suppose, to just getting a normal person on the ground for a drop-in centre.
That probably answers the next question I have. Is there a job sharing opportunity?
Well, we do have a great turnover of staff in that space there. Are we rectifying that problem?
I assume so, councillor.
That'd be good.
Overall, I can take that on notice and just let you know what our employment strategies are around the youth area.
Can I just, through you, Mr Chair, ask what EIPP stands for?
Early intervention. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Trouble you.
I know.
Trouble you.
There's a bit of that around.
Yes.
Moving down to the next one, sale yards costs are higher by 92,000. It has reduced down slightly, so we're bringing back in our costs there. The truck wash obviously is still a bit higher. We initially budgeted for only $1.76 per kilolitre of town water. However, we've charged ourselves $2.76 to be in line with other commercial entities coming through. We are reviewing those tanks up there and the flow of water from those tanks coming through into the truck wash area. So we're actually going through that process because we're not sure whether or not it's releasing all the way back through all those 16 tanks up there.
Sorry, Mr Chair, thank you. That was the next question. When that facility was built, the truck wash figures were there, and we need enough water to use the truck wash compared to washing at the Sayard, which we don't do. So there's a problem up there with all that water off that massive roof is not getting to the tanks. There's something wrong, because if we're using water at the truck wash, must mean we're getting more trucks, which means we've got more income. So it's good you're onto that. Again,
And also, I noticed that we're reflecting that in the budget going forward in increasing costs on that. So that's proactive, and that's a good thing.
And through you, Mr Chair, also, we're looking at a proposed fee of increasing by 25% for the cost of the truck wash per minute in our fee structure. So trying to capture that additional cost of the water.
But even the amount of water that comes off the roof is insufficient to service that truck wash for any period of time. The local water goes through it, but those tanks just won't keep up in any event. You're going to be using town water in that system.
Moving down to our next item there, which is the stormwater costs lower by 66K. We just had lower maintenance undertaken during the year. So we'll continue to look at that area and try to push to get some bit of drainage work done once our capacity of our maintenance staff comes available. Street cleaning costs are lower by 47,000. Still got that one full town sweep to come through, but it will be lower by the end of the year, which is quite pleasing. So that's a good return. Governance costs are that lower by 144, just lower donation costs coming through, section 356, plus all general management and admin costs and elected councillor costs with the election that it's had previously. Health service costs are lower by 76,000, so reduced costs in regards to customer service area, plus the on-site sewer management inspections. Public conveniences is higher by $50,000. So the additional cost of servicing a lot of the public conveniences across the Shire So that's one area where we'll look at trying to make more efficient going forward in our budgets. Building control and town
Can
planning
I just
costs.
ask you, Mr. Chair, just the public convenience, is that because grubs do things in public conveniences that just make it more difficult to clean it?
Sure, yes.
You know,
We need to clean them more often.
yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Is that through all of them, or is there one particular one that I'm thinking of at Bill Rose that might be?
That probably gets a fair bit of attention, the one at Bill Rose. But even the one here in the main street, we get problems every now and again that needs to be.
Speaking to some of my occasional clients who are residents down there, they tell me that those toilets are locked right now, so.
Yes, so we've had to resort to locking them to stop some of the vandalism and damage.
Fortunately. Moving down to our building control and town planning costs, lower by nearly $200,000. We've got a few vacancies in that area at the moment. And reduced use of consultants going forward. So we've actually maintained the work flow coming through with those staff that we do have. So that's been quite pleasing, and it's a very good on behalf of the Enviro team. Quarry costs are higher which is one of the main items that has increased, is at 667. We will do a vote to bring into account the higher costs there, as well as the increase in revenue. And also we'll be doing the review of what materials left on the floor, so that we bring that in as material going forward as inventory.
That'll be billed out to the projects for which we have grant funding, so
100%
of that back on this year.
That's right. Yep, 100% council. Animal costs are lower by 43,000. We've just had a staff member who's been on extended leave, being maternity leave, and there was no effectively replacement secured in that area. We've been able to maintain the level of service coming through with that vacancy in place, even though it has been a challenge, obviously. Emergency services and fire levies are lower by 96,000. Reduced maintenance required on the RFS vehicles to date, so there hasn't been as many occurrences of fires and so forth coming through. And our ESL costs that we had in our budget were a little bit more conservative because they're a bit lower this year, which has been quite pleasing. So
Is that going to change with the change in the way the emergency services levies going to be collected or filled out, or is it going to change to that system?
They've been talking about it, councillor, for many years. They did try to change that system going back nearly 5 years ago. I think.
And every now and again, through your chair, they raised again. I think the main model is they want council to be the bad guy and charge it onto the rates, and we collect the state government levy on their behalf. And of course, you can imagine most councils are opposed to that because it looks like the rates are going up. At the moment, it's predominantly through the insurance industry. I think effectively it's raised. So
There was through you, Mr. Chairman, it'll be 10 or even 15 years ago, there was an attempt to change that ESL levy through insurance, because you can choose to have a house and not insure it. And yet if it starts to burn down, the fire brigade will still come and put the fire out.
Yeah.
hence the reason why they want to move it to rates, because everyone who owns a house pays rates.
Yeah.
So they ensure 100% compliance by doing it through rates, but it means that we become the collection agency for the state government.
Yeah.
It is concerning seeing what's happening in Victoria at the moment. They've jacked that up, and New South Wales looks closely at what Victoria's
We
doing.
generally follow Victoria.
We do.
They go first, we go second.
Victorians follow the UN, we follow them.
Yeah.
Yes. So watch this space, councillor. I suppose that's the answer to the question. I know that the councils will kick back about it because it's a big impost on us, effectively.
And presumably we don't get any financial benefit for collecting.
I think they'll pay us an admin fee or something to that effect, but it's not generally.
Yeah.
It's not something we make huge profit out of, and it really will only just cover costs.
It's through the chair. It's like it'd be similar to the Hunter catchment, and we only get I think about 12 grand a year in total for maintaining and setting off the funds to them. Moving into on top of page 7 there, other sport and rec areas lower by 45. That's predominantly with the employee being in community services work coming through the mix. So that will change with we've now employed a new community service officer for Merriwa and Marundi, and effectively the employee who was undertaking that work will go back to her substantive role back into other sport and rec. Parks and gardens costs are higher by 134, so increased tree maintenance and maintenance coming through. Increase in our costs have also been because of the storm events that were encountered over the last few months. So that event has been declared, so we'll be looking at recovering back some of those costs that have been incurred. Sporting grounds is higher by $200,000. Again, similar to the parks, there was some storm event costs going into that area, which we'll identify and claim back from the event that occurred. Aerodrome costs are lower by $70,000, lower income, but we also had lower costs at the moment, which is a bit of an offsetter. Those lower costs are due to the staff vacancy out there and reduced maintenance required. So moving forward, we'll be looking at that with the change in the Hunter Warbirds operation. Bridge maintenance is lower by $117,000, just reduced maintenance required in regards to a lot of our bridges. I'm just trying to find out from the assets team whether they've engaged the contractor to undertake that bridge structure work. So we're looking at that going forward. Any underspend in that area we'll put off into a restricted asset and bring that back in next year, especially with some of the projects that are up at Marundi for a couple of the swing bridges up there as well. The footpath costs are lower by $55,000, so there's been lower maintenance undertaken to date in regards to that area. The next one shouldn't be in there. We took up a boat last month for 2.1 million, so it actually is line ball at the moment on the revised cost, so you can take that cost out there. Apologies for that being included. Local roads and admin costs are higher by $250,000. Continuing to look at these costs. I've asked the guys in the local roads admin area just to give me some update in regards to what projects will portion that to, because some of those costs can go to capital works jobs, and we'll make that assumption and make that allocation in the next month. Regional roads, which is another one that pushed up the actual overall negative balance, is $629,000. I've identified the heavy patch program, which we'll see that hasn't been spent in the capital area at the moment. About $1 million in heavy patch works. Not all regional roads, but it's also regional and local. Regional roads portion of that is around about that $400,000 to $500,000 mark. So our maintenance is still a little bit high, but we have been hit with a number of events that have required that additional work.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I made a trip to Dubbo last week, and there was roadworks being done almost at the Shire boundary, out on the western side there. Yeah, Newcastle was beyond Castle. But they weren't upper Hunter Shire vehicles, and that was what my expectation was when I was, held up. I'm thinking I'm going to see upper Hunter Shire workers.
Isn't it a Vinegaroid Road?
Yeah. How's that working? I mean, is RMS also employing somebody else to do that work?
Correct. So, through you, Mr. Chair, if it's work related to the res work at Vinegaroid Road, they're widening Vinegaroid Road intersection because that's one of the.
Is that what it was?
If it was that one, Transport for New South Wales have engaged contractors to do those res related works. Our works are related to maintenance.
Right.
So that new construction work won't be part of our
Yeah.
remit. But you're right, Transport can give us a bit of work and other contractors a bit of work. But we get most of the maintenance work.
And I just drove past the thinking this is not this. Was hoping to see a pot of gold at the end of it.
Turn off the Castle to go into town and then further along the turn off Vinegaroid.
Yeah, I know where the turn off, I know where the Vinegar Road.
By comparison, we did do the turn off into Cassilis, the new left turn lane there and the acceleration or deceleration lane. That was something that Transport said, were we happy to do, and we were quite comfortable with that. So we took that project on, so.
Okay. Moving into, I've pretty well done the local roads. Local roads maintenance is higher. That's another item that does have heavy patch in there. So that has Flags Road that we've done a lot of heavy patching on. So it effectively was about $400,000 to $500,000 worth of work in regards to that. So that will reduce down. So we'll reallocate that cost coming through. Sewer admin and mains area treatment is higher by 294. Just had a few extra costs coming through in regards to our mains and pump station maintenance. As I said there, we've got the guys in the water and sewer team to go through and identify whether there's been any renewals in that area so that we can capitalise those coming forward. And water costs are higher by 92, which is pretty well a cost for the licence for the Glenmore Dam that came in late from the 24 year coming into the mix. Apart from that, we're pretty well one line coming in.
Can I just interrupt before we move on to the next one? Something came up at Murrumbidgee Camp, which I thought wasn't a bad idea. The issue of putting something on the council Facebook page about what roadworks are being performed. It came up in Murrumbidgee Camp, and it was about road grading. But when it was pointed out to members of the CAC the way the grading program worked, they all became a lot more satisfied about the program, and they understood that every road will get graded at some stage. It's just part of a program. And one of the suggestions was that when roads are being patched or graded or upgraded, that there just be something on the Facebook page saying that we're out here fixing your road. Just so people say to people, look, we are out here looking after you. We are out doing the work. This is the road we've done today, or this is what we were doing.
Mr. Chair, that come from the open infrastructure. There's a grading program.
Correct, Mr. Mayor. So through the chair, we do publish it in the Infrastructure Services Committee. We were regularly posting the upcoming weekly work schedule as best we could. Can't always stick to the work schedule, as you know, especially with events like rain events like this, it does throw us out a bit. We can have a look at that again. Unfortunately, quite often when you do post that on Facebook, you just get a whole heap of negative comments about it.
Well, the same people are going to do that, but at the end of the day, it's if we keep putting it out, it is a little bit of community engagement. And
let me follow that up again.
And Councillor Burns was very good. We used to get a to where they're going. Councillor Burns was very good at keeping that up to date. I just find a lot of our residents are visual people at times, and I wonder if it's worth having a pin drop of the Shire where those road roaders are, or whether that costs more. Not.
Yeah, we can look at different ways of doing it. Typically, it's been by list.
There are so few opportunities we have to say what a good job we're doing, and we're spending your money in the way you want to see it spent. A little bit of shameless self-promotion. I don't have anything against that, and we don't do enough of it, quite frankly.
Let me chase up the comms people again. I'll do it.
I actually concur with that. I think we've got to be prepared to, we're always going to cop criticism from somebody who just wants to bash us, but I think we really need to be on the front foot and telling the world that where we're doing a good job, we are doing a good job.
Council always used to get it every week. It's the grading program. There it was from the infrastructure or someone. And that was to give council an idea if you got a call. Oh, by the way, that's next week, weather permitting. I can't see a problem in.
Sometimes the danger is that was the accuracy, because if you said they were going to be somewhere that week and then they weren't there that week, that's the problem. But sometimes cause more thanks than.
But the level of satisfaction that we got out of the Murrumbidgee CAC, and there are some strong personalities in that group that were getting a bit feisty about the roads not being graded. When it's pointed out to them that every single road is part of the program, they will all be graded at some stage. They will be done on the basis of priority and the amount of use they get. You can see the whole room go, oh, that's fine. Yeah, no worries. Understand.
Okay, we'll move down into our capital area, which is nearly spot on budget overall. There's a few ups and downs within the overall budget happening. Our fleet acquisition is higher by about 99K, so we've got 2 extra vehicles earlier than we anticipated before the end of the year. We've got another couple coming on board at the end of this month, so I'm trying to turn over a bit of our fleet that's getting a bit old. Our government placed nurse system, as we mentioned earlier, is 107. Sale yards work, $80,000 for the emergency replacement of PA and the finalisation of the lagoon sludge pond, I beg your pardon. Off-leash dog area, that the acquisition of the land underneath the bypass by 42,000. The White Park's internal roads and the electricity supply are higher as well. We finalised that White Park. We probably will have a bit of grant funding to come back against that, so we'll take up that vote coming through in next month. The internal roads, however, that's a cost that council wears, but we needed to do that, otherwise there would be a whole sludge pit of mud down there. And those roads have held up, which has been quite pleasing. Our local and regional road heavy patch, as I mentioned earlier, there's a number of heavy patches in our maintenance area. It's higher than that 250 there. The program is lower by. However, that extra overrun will be covered by the RERF funding, which is the regional like pothole replacement funding. So it's covered by grant funding overall. Barrington Forest slip, it's progressing really well. So it's higher than budget by 70,000. So it's expected to be completed now in the 25-26 year. We've got about $1 million worth of work to be done into the current year coming forward. UV chlorination upgrade is lower by nearly $100,000. So that project continues to work on schedule and on budget, and will be finished before the end of the year. Our mains renewal program is 160,000 lower, so it's continuing on target and on budget. Water treatment upgrade, telemetry. We haven't had to do any upgrades to our telemetry at this point in time, so that we could have a vote in next month to remove that out of there, but we will have to do it in next year.
Just on telemetry, are we all 4 and 5G now? We don't have any 3G communication issues?
We did.
Yeah, I'm going to say, unfortunately, Mr. Chair, the 3G system was much more reliable than the 5G I found. Couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I think they use a mixture of radio and Telstra network, so I'd have to get that back to you.
So we'll just take that on notice, councillor, coming through, and we'll find out the answer. The sewer treatment ponds, sludge removal, and also the wall renewal. Those works are continuing and they're expected to be completed by the end of this financial year, and they're expected to be lower than we anticipated in the budget, which is quite pleasing.
That wall renewal, that's in relation to the concrete walls.
They're earth walls.
The settlement ponds, not the stirring.
No, that's right. So it's the final ponds where it sits before being released.
I was going to say, because the concrete ones are quite concerning, the way that they're sort of only just held together at the moment.
Yeah, so they're the concrete walls on the trickling filters.
Yeah.
These are the large earthen dam walls around the large ponds.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chair, a lot of rock has been put around the outside of that earth wall. So that's what a lot of that cost is, the renewal of it, to try and hold it together.
Assume so we have to do something with those trickling ponds.
Absolutely, and then, we only had a meeting last week, I think it was, about future water and sewerage major capital works program. We've got a few years, we can patch it and hold it together.
We hope.
The biggest problem is the funding is probably limited to a maximum of 60% from the state
That's
government.
my understanding, that you'd have to be an in-kind contribution.
So even with a 40% contribution from council, it will, if we were to do those works, there is no way around it other than increasing our developer contributions significantly and our water and sewerage fees significantly. And we'd have to probably introduce those fees probably 4 or 5 years prior to commencing works to get enough money in the bank before going out.
From my understanding, the reality is that that older part of the sewage works is reaching the end of its useful life. And particularly with the new developments that are slated just south of Scone, we are going to need to increase the capacity and have a more efficient sewer treatment plant
Absolutely.
there. And the approximate figure I understood was about $40 million to
It's in that order.
have that done, of which we have to come up with, as you say.
40% of that.
Yeah,
So that's 16 million.
Yeah. And through you, Mr. Chair, that will involve borrowings.
yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's no way that you'll be able to have that. And also similar to the water.
Water's worse, it's probably in the order of 80 million. So you're looking at 120 million in water and sewer and Scone. In the next, between 5 to 10, maybe 15 years, depending on how long we can push things
I mean,
out.
that's problematic given the levels of grants which are available at the moment wouldn't even touch the sites. I mean, the stuff that we would get out of the grant funding of the water grants that are available would be wouldn't get near that. I wouldn't have thought
No,
at this stage. I mean, particularly, the overarching problem, of course, is we're not in a position to make co-contribution.
that's correct.
Even if that grant funding were available, some of the grants that I've seen come out of that program, unless you're, politically, there's a political motivation for, getting water out to some Western council, the money's not going to be there. But we certainly have to do it.
Yeah. We're not the only council in this predicament.
And unfortunately, from an economic point of view, you look at all regions and funding, and the state government are already squeezing us. It really has to be printed and sent to us by the feds.
Mm.
And that's a nation building project. And if we have some politicians that have the ticket actually print the money put towards something useful, it would come to the regions. That's the only way I think economists see that happening. Otherwise, that just burdens rural communities, which then die further, which continue that path.
It's probably going to have to be something that we make a bit of a priority in the next few years, though, to get this actually happening, because that plant is not going to last. You're not going to get another 20 years out of it.
Not 20, no, definitely not 20, no.
So we're going to have to do something about it sooner in the scheme of things.
The 360 blocks out there and 100 up on the mountain, their contribution's not going to go anywhere near it.
No, but we're going to have to, as I say, we're going to have to do something at some stage, because if it all comes to the grinding halt, those ponds let go, we're going to be putting a lot of very poorly treated sewage into the water
So
system.
there's a couple of reports coming to council, there's one coming
And
to
the
council
new
in May.
PA will be knocking on our door and fining us.
Other problems for us.
Through this chair, there is a report coming to you in May about some of the first steps in regard to more around the joint water. But we've also got I don't know if we'll get it to you in June, but it's getting close, in regard to the sewerage and the entire, cost implications for, as I said, developer users and how we're going to get finance for it.
But through you, Mr. Chair, we spoke to all the politicians that come in before the elections. That was one of the high things. If you want us to move forward, we need it. It was in their booklet, and not one of them showed any interest.
There's no votes in it.
That's not it.
It's not sexy. Who wants to come to that ribbon cutting?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
That's the
What
problem.
have done, mate?
Yeah.
Right, moving down through that. So overall, as we can see, is $1.8 million negative variance coming in. The position that in regards to the votes, there's no votes surrenders in this current month. So we pretty well will bring those through into the current May period. Bank funds, obviously with a lot of our capital expenditure from advanced grants in advance, is coming down to the levels around that $20 million mark. We have a lot of grant funding that will come back to us over the course of the next month and a half, from a lot of these capital works projects that we've been undertaking up on the hill. So we've got funds coming back in the other way. So hopefully that'll now start to turn as our costs we dwindle in regards to the cost up the hill. So that should improve and go the other way. Our external loans, about $27.5 million outstanding at the end of April. Internal loans, we've had discussions again with the Office of Local Government in regards to our internal loans that we got from the Water and Sewer Fund. And as said there, we continue the discussions in regards to that internal loan come the end of this financial year. And that's probably just a conservative approach overall. And it was very receptive from the financial performance team at OLG that we undertake that coming through before the end of June.
I'm glad to see internal repayment as well.
Yep, correct.
Just on that one too, the Mayor and I, Mr Chair, met with the Deputy Secretary yesterday for OLG, just to talk things general in regard to council. Obviously, financial sustainability was high on both our agendas to discuss. I think Brett's comment was he has a number of lists of council, and yes, we are on one of his lists, but we're not at the top of his list, which is probably a fair comment. His biggest concern from our perspective is cash flow, as is ours. So, you know, as Mr Phelps said, we are having very regular conversations with his finance team and our finance team, and both Brett Whitworth at OLG and myself talk regularly as well. So I think we're all on the same page. He was quite comfortable with the changes that we've been making over the last couple of years to get this back on track. And yes, he said we're on the watch list, but he's not going to be taking any immediate action. He's just going to let things keep heading eventually going. So.
Moving down to our restricted assets, as there's no votes or surrenders coming through, they remain similar to what was forecasted at the end of June, at the end of March. Capital expenditure, $65 million is our revised budget at this point in time, coming through. As I said earlier, we will be going through and reviewing all our projects coming to finality, and also what will need to be deferred into next year. So we'll get some sort of more clarity around that for the May meeting, for the May month-end meeting in June. We've done 72% of our overall budget to date. So we spent nearly $47 million to date. So we have been spending a fair bit of chunk of money. Included then from page 13 through to page 35, we have all our schedules coming through. So the fund and functions gives you just a very quick overview of the different service areas of council and where they're sitting. As you can see with our bank funds, it's dropped away significantly as we've used those grants in advance, which is understandable. And as I said earlier, that should start now ticking back towards positive and going up slightly with recovery of a number of grants where we've had to expend some money. Overall, our investments are sitting at the 20,500,000. Still got a number of items in there that are all pretty well fives. We've got one that dropped down to just below 5, so that's always pleasing. I think pretty well going forward, we'll have them around that 4.5 to 4.25 now coming through. Loan schedule there, just to let you know where each of the loans are sitting. And then we go into our capital work summary, which just gives you the high level or an easy view of where all our capital works program actually sits and what's chugging through. Thank you all.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr Chair, just seen it's to do with cash. As we most are aware, I part yesterday with their special rate variation announcement. I find it a little disappointing that yesterday morning I had a knock on the door from the General Manager to say we were successful. That was very much confidential, and there would be a media release out at midnight last night, which I hadn't seen. So I sat beside a couple of councillors yesterday at meetings, and I talked to a couple of councillors on the phone yesterday and kept my part of the deal. It was confidential. But I find it disturbing last night to see it on social media, and I had a phone call. Do I know anything about it? No. Well, I lied. No, I don't know anything about it because it's embargoed. I didn't get into that. But I know Councillor Stoltz sent a link through from iPart, which I can't get into to find out where it comes from. So, I mean, as the GM said, we had Brett Whitworth up yesterday. We spoke all finances, didn't get into that,
No.
Didn't get into it because it was embargoed. It puts me in an awful spot and the GM, because now we had to get back to iPart last night in the Office of Local Government to say, hey, it's not me. I didn't break the embargo, which we talked about last night. So where's it coming from? Where's its release coming from?
I don't know, it may have been posted early on their website.
I went to their website and had a search. That's where I got it from. They said nothing. It was all in, yeah, all the information I got was off there.
Well, when I go into that page, it says page not found.
Yeah,
Then go into the,
that link doesn't work for me either.
No.
But,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
but when you go into the iPad, it doesn't actually, that media release, which is on social media, is not on iPads.
They told me,
Page.
sorry, Mr. Mayor, they told me they were going to release that at midnight, which is why we didn't send anything around earlier yesterday. We did time a media release for, I think, 12:15 or something last night after that went out. So that went out, and also a Facebook page went out last night after the embargoed time. Yeah, my biggest concern was that IPART may have felt that either the mayor or I had breached their confidentiality. So I did contact the CEO of IPART and just let them know that it hadn't come from council. But I don't know. I don't know where that information. If it was on IPART's webpage, it would be their error, I guess. Yeah.
Well, just to follow up on it, I'd like you to get back in contact with iPart and find out exactly, because it makes us, well, makes me and makes you look like a little.
No, I've confirmed with them that we did not release it.
So I want to know, did they
Yeah.
falsely put it out before midnight?
Well, I mean, the Facebook, thing that Troy put out. It says table one summary of IPART's decision on council special rate variations. It shows the approvals that were made and those that were not approved. So there must have been some release when you put that out. There has to have been.
That's those words were in the media release that we were given yesterday afternoon and told not to put out until midnight. So that went out at midnight. So our question is how, and maybe IPART just published it on their webpage earlier. I don't know, but we were told from them that it was embargoed until midnight. So
I remember because you mentioned to me yesterday when we were at the Weeds meeting that it had been approved. I understood it was going to come out today, but you knew.
I knew
that it was coming out, and then when I saw this, I thought, it must have been maybe they've just published it early because the figures look very authoritative. In that place, it must have been released.
That's their words. There's no doubt about it. That's their words because it's directly from their press release. It's just the question is, and we know that they sent it to each of the 6 councils. So the 6 GMs from each of those 6 council involved had a copy. The media would get a copy in advance. So there was a number of, would have been radio stations, print media, TV stations would have got it in advance so they could prepare for today's announcements. So there's a number of ways that could get out into the community, I guess. It was just confusing to us how IPART would have it on their website before their chosen time.
I think we'll follow that through.
Yeah.
Well, I
It's
suppose,
weird the link isn't working.
But it comes up,
Yeah.
page not found.
well, through you, Mr. Chair, I suppose that this is just an example of within the bureaucracy, the left hand not knowing what the right hand's doing. Because if you remember from the federal election, the Prime Minister's Department announced that they were going on caretaker mode the day before the Prime Minister actually went to the Governor General and sought an election. So these things happen, but but I take your point. I mean, it is embarrassing.
Very embarrassing. When I fellow councillors just are sitting beside, but part of my deal was embargo. So anyway, right, we'll follow through. Thank you.
All right. Have I got a mover to move forward the notation, and we don't have any adoptions today, do we?
No.
There's nothing in there.
I'm happy to move.
Councillor Shield, second Councillor Fraser, all those in favour? You guys have it, thanks Robin. And move forward onto the property update there, if there's anything that needs discussion.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll take it as read and maybe just draw your attention to Hill Street is now exchanged. So that'll settle in mid-June. The Aberdeen Heights subdivision, I think I mentioned to you last time, we believed it was unsuccessful but hadn't received formal notification. that has since come, and I did circulate that to all councillors when it came through, but for the purpose of anyone listening to this recording it afterwards, this is the formal notification to council that it's unsuccessful. That means we can't proceed with the Aberdeen Heights subdivision at present. We just don't have any internal funds to allow that to happen. So we'll continue to try and seek other funding and talk to the Housing Minister. We'll continue to talk to the Housing Minister about some money for that. And the only other one probably is there's been a bit of discussion around a subdivision or potential subdivision at Rosedale Estate at Murrurundi. We're waiting for the Community Advisory Committee just to give us some feedback on the thoughts there. And they came back at the CAC meeting this week, generally supportive of the current land to the immediate north of the subdivision, but don't want it to go too far to the east, which would impose on the King of the Ranges lease. And that gives us some guidance now to move forward on that.
It did though, I mean, in fairness, they did also identify that if you do this development, there's still going to create an issue of buffer between the new development and camping. So the problem that they had originally, which why that buffer was created, is just going to move slightly to the right. The same problem is going to eventuate, and that's something that was raised at the camp, because that if that small patch is developed, the reason why that patch is left the way it was, it's still going to have the same problem.
Yeah. Just to that point, the feedback I got was they were more supportive of just moving to the north immediately and still leaving that buffer. So I think the north would allow maybe 9 or 10 parcels at the end of
Then the issue becomes financial viability.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we can explore that. Now we know sort of the community feeling around those 2 or 3 options there. We can explore that a little bit further.
Give it to a developer.
Well, that's the sensible way to do it, is whether it's
Fine.
And if I could share some insights into all of those, I concur with what Councillor Fraser there said with the meeting the other night. Concern about sensitive areas with trees and whatnot, but that's more a development issue.
Exactly.
Further down the track.
That'll be addressed in the DA.
I have been going through some of the Murrurundi Council paperwork. Now, just so everybody knows, if you do wish to find some of that through microfiche, it is up at the University of New England. The bulk of it is stored in their records, and some of it is stored down in Parramatta at the state records as well. So if anybody's interested in any old records going back, because I was asked to have a look at Wilson Memorial, some of the intentions of the grant, the donated land. But there is information out there if anybody's interested. On Aberdeen, just Earl and I were at Aberdeen and CAC the other night, and it'll be visible to councillors shortly, but we had discussions with the battery.
North Harbour Clean Energy
North. Discussing the subdivision there further down the back. They're talking about an investment of $500 million on that.
We're actually going to build something there.
Yeah, and it's bigger than what I would have expected.
Yeah, I must admit, I was, my understanding was that there was actually going to be solar panels and everything there, but it's, all it is a very big battery. And yeah, my eyes have been opened as to how battery energy storage systems work. And I mean, they just suck power out of the grid, stick it in a battery, and then wait for the system to have a wobble, and then they sell it back into the system. And because I thought one of the reasons where it was that there's the Ausgrid substation just across the railway line, but they're not even connecting to that. It all goes back through the 330 kV line, which is running down the valley behind Aberdeen.
It's an interesting development concept in that, like you say, it's right next to that substation, but it's also right next to a coal loader. So the discussions we had was a lot around regen versus current energy. In my opinion, energy's non-denominational, doesn't care how it's generated. And so it's fascinating we've got a precinct potentially in that space, but it does give avenue for future financial gains for Aberdeen specifically, and potentially for the only downside, amongst downsides would be noise complaints and management of that, but that would be interesting going forward. Sorry, on indulgence, just sharing that with those around, but have I got a mover?
Well, can I just ask a question about Hill Street?
Yep.
Now, you said Hill Street's been exchanged. Is that the one on the western side, the block that's
Eastern side.
so that's that long thin
That's
block,
the narrow,
the
narrow
500 square metre block?
Yep.
Okay, because again, whilst I was down there flogging tickets to the rodeo, the sign's sitting there and I'm thinking, oh, have we sold that yet?
How did you resolve Angus Patterson's concern about the right of way of the road through the bottom side of it?
Simply that we will relocate the road. That's what we've said to the purchaser. If they wish to retain the gravel there, we will relocate the road and leave the gravel. If they don't want it there for a driveway, we'll remove it. So that will be done by our operational staff.
Fair enough.
Right. Any more questions, comments? Go forward, we've got a mover. Councillor for the second. By fraction.
Oh,
Councillor.
let Troy have it.
No, you can have the next. Councillor Shields, all those in favour? Okay, we'll move forward to the grants report there.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Again, I'll just highlight not a great lot of news for this month, with 3 unsuccessful notifications. One being that 3.5 or close to 3.5 million for the Aberdeen subdivision that we just mentioned. Quite a lot of projects submitted though, and we'll see how they go in coming months. And finally, we discussed earlier on some urgent funding opportunities, one closing next week for the Capital Care Assistance Program. Now, we know we've been unsuccessful for that 2 years running. There is probably a question about if we do apply for it now, we can make an application, but there's a lot of other costs associated with government places we know ongoing, rather than even if we were successful, there's still a question about the viability, and council needs to make some decisions about that ongoing. We can probably rehash our application and lodge it in the event that we find some solution for Government Place. And if there's no solution, withdraw the application.
I think we ought to.
Sorry?
I think we ought to do that.
I think it covers all bases then. We're not presuming an outcome.
Yeah.
That's the issue, isn't it? I mean, I think we came close to a minor disaster at Merriwa at the meeting when someone had actually read Depop and saw that there was very little forward funding coming in place included in that document. So I think we need to at least be working on the basis that there might be some way. I mean, I've floated the idea, which has now got started to get at least one person in Merriwa riled up, that Merriwa can pay for Government Place. Which I think there's one person who has now said that that's completely unfair and we shouldn't have to do that. But it is a solution. If Merriwa wants to keep Government Place, then Merriwa can damn well pay for the thing.
Yep.
And on that basis, we probably still need to be making various funding applications and doing things that we, business as usual, until we make a determination about what's going to happen.
That's fine. I think we can resubmit that application.
Yeah, drag it out.
As you say, it doesn't presume any outcome. And if we find that we can't continue on, or somebody else takes it over, we can either transfer the application or withdraw it.
I do have one question about the grants. The very last one, the New South Wales Government EPA solar panel grant, 400,000.
Yes.
And we're contributing 56. What's the net benefit to us of being involved in that? I mean, it's going to cost us 56,000 if it's successful. What do we get?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We effectively will obtain solar panels that haven't ended their life yet. So effectively, we'll be able to repurpose those on our own facilities and reduce our energy costs.
So
that's the premise. Yeah. So that's the premise.
Lifespan of like 25.
Yeah.
Lifespan of 25 years.
A lot of solar panels that have come off may be coming off after 15 years, but they still have that. The actual the project itself, they actually test them and see how much more lifespan they've got in them. And then we can repurpose those onto our own facilities and obtain a benefit through reduced energy coming
For a
through.
shorter period of time, and then we'll have to remove them, replace them and dispose of them at a cost.
Yeah.
Okay. What's all of
So
them?
I discussed this.
I know the manager of sustainability has gone through the process and
Yeah,
actually
he's gone through the
done the costings around it, and he seems to
Thinks he can make it work?
Make it work, yeah.
Okay.
Just
I'm
saying.
not buying second-hand cars.
As residents, we're not allowed to scavenge in the tip.
This won't be scavenging in the tip. This will be actual, before it makes landfill.
I just
So
thought-
we're not, so we're gonna do this, and it's not with an aim to pull these things apart and recover. I think someone said to me, there's silver.
Yep.
No,
there's-
it's to use them
And the
as
anti-malleable
their, in
frame
their
and
present
all that.
form. Yeah, to reuse them in their present form.
So then at the end of this, we put these
Second-hand.
second-hand panels up on, will we then pull them down
Yes.
and pull them
That's
apart?
That's
We will have to
councillor
pull
Payne.
them apart.
Yeah.
They are second-hand.
Yeah,
They've got a finite lifespan, even brand new ones.
yeah, that's right, yeah.
So we're buying second-hand ones,
Yeah.
which we're gonna have to dispose of, like buying a second-hand car.
Yeah.
Are we buying them or are people?
No, they're free. They actually are going to put them into landfill, so we
They would
repurpose
have gone to
them.
landfill anyway.
So
we're delaying-
So,
we're
so
delaying the
where are
landfill.
these coming from? We're talking, the Merriwar one?
Oh.
Is that the sort of?
No, they'll be existing, they could be off homes, for
Yeah.
example.
Decommissioned ones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And there could be an upside, of course, because you've got generating power.
correct.
So
Well,
that, as long as that offsets.
It's an installation.
it's a pilot program.
It'll be interesting, it'll be interesting to see the numbers, see how the numbers are massaged to make it appear profitable.
Through you,
Really
Mr. Chair.
being slightly cynical about these things.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I think EPA is trying to get the maximum out of it so that it doesn't go to landfill. I think that's what they're really trying to do.
Because that's an ecological disaster that's about to happen in 25 years.
Exactly, 100%. Totally agree.
And currently EPA are running their waste to energy commission down there in Quarry Street, which is an interesting one to watch. I think they're discussing moving one of the concepts to Tomago. So that'll be burning waste, and their concern, believe it or not, is that the EPA have shut down so many tips that they now have not enough space to put their waste. Anyway, create your concern so you can run your own commission into fixing it. So whether there'll be any feedback from that would be interesting, whatever concept there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just the open funding opportunities, the aged care capital assistance program. I just, and I don't know the veracity of it, but the journalist who was there from Hunter River Times claimed that the Merton Court funding that they got earlier this year or late last year, they put in 5 applications for that. So maybe that's what it is. We put in 2, failed twice, and the bureaucrats are waiting for us to get to 3 or 4 before we
Our problem is, at least to my understanding, our problem is, as I pointed out, they said there's a 15-point.
Yeah.
15 points.
Yeah.
5 of them are financial viability. Well, we're shot.
Yeah.
We're shot on that one.
Yeah.
And once you get below 9,
You're not even in the hunt. Yeah.
So we're automatically shot on 5 points.
Yeah.
We know the program's oversubscribed every year by a factor of 5 to 1. So that's probably why every 5 years, you might get successful.
And I mean, the Department of Aged Care has really effectively said to us, we can't see any way out of this for you guys. You've got to close it, and we're going to help you do it. I mean, that's the situation that they have. They're not enthusiastic about putting more money into it. As I say, this is why I'm quietly suggesting to Merriwar that if you want to keep this facility, it's going to have to be council pay for it. Council's going to pay for it. How are we going to do this so that it's fair? Is it across the whole Shire, or if you want it that bad, are you guys going to feel the pain?
Yep.
Because that's the reality. The money's coming from us. If you want to keep it, we're paying for it. Where is this money coming from?
challenging one.
Mm.
All right, we've got any more questions, comments before I go to the vote? We've got a mover for noting the grants report. Councillor Stiles, second councillor Fraser. All those in favour?
Aye.
Let's have a request for donations for this gentleman.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. 2 donation requests this month, one successful, one unsuccessful as per the table. The unsuccessful one was also an application last year. It was unsuccessful. It just doesn't meet our.
Well, Mr. Dryfield, how much did he want?
Several thousand, I believe, but we do limit our grants to about the 400 unless councillors override that and
He got a
choose to
pretty
give them all.
He got a pretty good outcome. He's an interesting character, but he got a pretty good outcome from having the feed merchants support him.
Right.
They were collecting $1 per bag of feed that they
Oh,
sold.
okay, right.
To him. So he's got other avenues. Of
Yeah,
money.
he has made a number of applications to us, but given that it's a single sponsorship event outside of our local government area,
Yeah,
it's that we
it's
sponsor.
not something. It's not
Is
something
this the guy who's disabled and he's
Yeah, it's equestrian.
yeah, I heard him on the radio.
Yeah. I'm doing good stuff, but it just doesn't fit with
Yeah,
our.
actually, as I say, the feed merchants around Europe.
Yeah.
Helping him out.
Yeah, they're collecting money for it. So he's not without some sort of resources.
Very good. So we've got a mover.
Lovely to see Maryville Polo Cross did well.
Yes, this weekend. I don't know how it'll go with the wet weather, but.
It's too wet, they won't play, but, yeah,
Where's that held?
at the racetrack,
mm,
in the middle of the racetrack.
Good. All right, we've got a mover. Move councillor Shields, second councillor Fraser, all those in favour? All ayes have it. Response to previous questions, if we've got a mover for noting questions answered, I'll move that. And second by councillor Stiles, all those in favour? The ayes have that. There being any questions, comments, in general before we close up?
So it's slightly disappointing that this EPA thing's just been fallen into the we don't care basket so far. Or the appearance of the we don't care basket.
Yeah.
But I mean, I thought that was a worthwhile inquiry. Is you collect all this money, how about do something real, give you a debt list.
As I said, it's, we'll get back onto that drum and start annoying some people again shortly because 6 months is up. So. But thank you all and call the meeting closed at 10:37.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all.